Well, hello. Welcome to the Friday Council podcast, episode 19. We are coming to you live from Lake Pearson, South Island of New Zealand.
On the shores of
Lake Pearson.
Lake Pearson.
And, yeah,
It's being poetic.
it's about 10 minutes to 10 p.m. Bit of a late night pod sesh. But,
Something different.
something different. We decided
Candid.
to do a bit of a roadie and get in touch with our wilderness side.
Get out in nature more, pussies. It's good for your mental health.
Agreed. I'm feeling rejuvenated out here. I'm thinking about conquering the world with some of the sights I'm seeing out here.
Yeah, you've been having some bigger thoughts, big ideas while you're out here on the gin.
Yeah. Anyway, to get us off, Daniel, what were we going to talk about? Privilege.
Yes, but you always see about whenever privilege is mentioned, it's always in a negative connotation. But
Mhm.
I was always been wondering, at least for a few years, how to use it the best. Like, we've got it, get over it.
Yeah.
Some people have more than others.
Yeah.
Get over it. How
But
do we?
we're all relatively privileged.
Yeah, definitely. And how do we use it? Like, how do we use it best? And I think the epidemic of meaninglessness that
Yeah.
maybe every mid-20-year-old man has always felt throughout history, but seems to be especially pronounced, maybe with the internet or whatever. But seems to be a question of how do we use this now newfound privilege to do something worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I think what we're doing right now, pat ourselves on the back, is using that. Sorry, we might have a few distractions because there is a campground. We're positioned as far away from everyone as possible. David's pointing and giggling at something in the distance. Explain what you're seeing.
There's a rocking motion in the tent.
Coming from the tent. Lights swinging.
There is. That's pretty epic.
Wow. Hey, no better place to do it, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Someone's using their privilege.
using
They
your
have a good time.
privilege right. My first point that I think is very slept on and underappreciated is using your privilege, which often comes in the form of money, for healthy foods. Your
Yeah.
body's number one,
Yeah.
and so paying extra for a good quality food, assuming you can afford it, which most of our listeners
Yeah.
probably can.
You
middle class, just
but-
do it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David had a good example of something along
Westgold.
those lines. Can you explain that?
Was it Westgold?
Yes.
Or it was that the specific case?
Honey.
Honey.
Yeah. So, something I guess I just started paying attention to recently. I'd sort of just been doing this anyway, where I'd been buying like these high quality New Zealand products, and then so one of them being Manuka honey, another being Westgold butter, real high quality New Zealand butter, and then I just started feeling proud about that, the fact that we have access, even if it may be relatively expensive.
Is it a vacuum cleaner?
What the fuck?
Oh, well.
Sorry. Someone's using a vacuum cleaner in the middle of nowhere, but and then I guess it inspired some like national pride in me or something, and I started looking into some of the backstories of these countries' products. But one of them being, it's not really the backstory of them, but there's a company called Westgold that's in a legal battle in the United States at the moment with Kerrygold, another butter brand. Kerrygold's a big butter brand, Irish butter brand in the United States, where United States produced butter is rubbish. So foreign butter is highly sought after, or high quality foreign butter, i.e. Irish or New Zealand butter, is highly sought after. And Kerrygold is suing Westgold, saying that their branding is too similar. Essentially, it's infringing on their IP, intellectual property, and they may have a case, but maybe this is not a logical or rational standpoint, but an emotional standpoint, I'm like, man, I hope West Butter Westgold Butter win that lawsuit because it's a bloody good product. And
Yeah, I can think of an example too, which I think most of us can agree with, is in terms of chocolate. New Zealand being known
Whittaker's,
for,
man,
yeah, Whittaker's
F Cadbury
is probably the best
Hell
chocolate in the world, I'd
yeah.
say.
100%.
I mean, obviously that's subjective, but yeah, I mean, last time I went travelling, my family were asking for us to bring it to them, so that's, just feel privileged that you have such good quality products. Obviously, dairy being our one of our top strengths.
And it's not cheap, but it's the value that you get. And to me, the quality of the product is worth the price that you pay, and you should be proud if you have the money to buy these high quality products. To just, as I say, for me, it instills some sort of national pride. Like, I've got enough money to buy high quality local products, help out these local companies and enjoy them, and it just feels good. I don't know what there is to that. As I say, it's not a logical thing, it's an emotional thing, but it hits a spot.
And that's another point about using your privilege, if you're thinking about privilege as money, is paying for those good, more expensive but higher quality items, and in that way you're actually supporting a higher quality wage,
a sustainable, exactly. If you're
better environmental practices.
Exactly, I was going to say, chances are, if you're paying like a higher price, it means the working conditions are going to be better, the wages are going to be better, everything is going to be better.
Yeah, so you can use price. There's always exceptions, but you can use price as a gauge to how ethical and how good in general a product is.
It's a general one, and this is somewhat random, and I haven't looked into it, but I remember it stuck with me. I think I just walked into the room when the news was on, and there was something about more New Zealanders paying a higher price for venison, and it was suggesting very similar lines, like the venison was wild game, or if I can't confirm that, but it was coming from either it was wild, if not it was an ethical free farm or something, but that comes with a high cost. But it was saying that there are more and more New Zealanders willing to pay that price for a high quality product, and as I say, that means that everything is better. Okay, the only thing that's bad is that you pay a high price, but it means very likely that the sourcing, as I say, that animals lived a better life, the workers are working in better conditions, getting a higher wage, and the quality, the probably less chemicals or additives and things.
And that is usually a more true reflection of what it costs. Yeah, like we're saying, to get a good quality product from
it's expensive,
from
it's
start
not cheap
to finish, and when there are cheaper options like that, oftentimes the cost is being borne by the, I think I mentioned it before, by the environment, or by the workers, or by the environment.
Well, most cases, probably the animal.
Someone's paying for it. Yeah, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So there's no way of getting around a good, wholesome product. And you should use your privilege to support those.
Yeah. And as I say, if you do have the money, as I say, I'm speaking, from a privileged position, I have enough disposable income that I can buy these products. But if you're someone who does have the money, but you're always looking for the cheapest product, I say flip it on its head and think through these intangible factors and like feel a pride, like a sense of pride, like wow, like as I say, think of the whole production line. Be like, isn't it awesome that I'm paying a high price, which means that an animal can live a good life, workers can get paid good money, and I can consume a good product. Yeah,
I think for me, especially just, I guess, going out of like study and into full-time work, whereas price was one of the biggest indicators for purchasing a product, and not realizing the like supply chain and the processes that go through said product. Obviously you've got raw materials, and then how that gets produced. You've got obviously shipping and freight, if it's a worldwide product, and then every step after that needs to make their cut from retail or wholesale, depending on what the product is. And so I guess taking a step back kind of made me realize price isn't the only determining factor, and coming from a place of more privilege, I guess, in the sense that having the ability to be able to enjoy and afford more nice foods and things. I mean, we don't mean to come across and sound braggy because it's not, not everyone's in that same position.
Yeah.
But we definitely, we definitely feel the privilege, and we're very thankful and very lucky.
And are grateful to, and feel good when we use it in a good
Oh,
way. You
yeah.
can tell.
I feel
Your
good.
soul can tell.
I feel good, but I feel like a lot of people don't. I know like people who are in similar positions, but they're always like, oh man, like look at the price of cheese and stuff like that. And it's like, if it's not like, if you've got a reasonable disposable income, as I say, flip it on its head and be like, forget about the price if it's not really going to like change drastically, like you're not going to miss the rent payment or the electricity payment, and be like, yeah, I'm paying a reasonably high price, but think of the quality. Price is what you pay, value is what you get.
This is something you wanted to bring up, David, especially in so there's obvious shame or like ickiness about talking about it, and everyone's like, well, and like not everyone can blah blah blah. It's like, no, I don't know if anyone's ever said that, but being proud of your privilege and then you proud of what you've got because of it.
So
and what you can give as well. It's one point I want to make later, but
let me try and like spell that out, and it's not just like a food related to food, but if you think about it, it's quite common thing in New Zealand that if you come from a middle class family, especially a white middle class family, it's like, oh yeah, but you're privileged. But so isn't that what everyone should strive to be, or like come from? Like, it's a good thing that you had good parents who, or food, there was never any concern that there would be food on the table and a roof over your head. Like, that's a good thing, right? And don't get me wrong, I absolutely feel for people where those things are a struggle, that they're missing meals and stuff like that. But it's also counterintuitive, because you would wish for those people to have that, wouldn't you? You would wish for those people who don't have a roof over their head or are missing meals, you would wish that they had that, because that would be good for them. So we should strive to live in a society, where we all have access to that. And I don't think that you can reach that point if you're going to criticize people who currently have those things, which seems to be quite a common thing in New Zealand.
Can we just real quickly as well, just rattle? I know privilege is defined as something, a special trait or a special gift that is given to a certain person or group of people. And so when we're talking about, I think a privilege, just being born in New Zealand is a privilege. And so that's not, so we could, for this, all intents and purposes, we could say like given by God or given like luck or whatever, we have been given this privilege. So it's still a privilege, but all the privileges we can rattle off now. I'm just thinking of like born in New Zealand's a privilege, to having two parents is a privilege, money, having enough money to not worry about things is a privilege.
Christchurch water,
go on holiday is a privilege. Clean water privilege.
Christchurch water specifically.
No
fluoride, no.
Well, some places are adding
some
to
places
it.
in Christchurch have been tarnished, but for the time being, where I live, I guess I'm extra privileged in that I live in a suburb in Christchurch that I don't have awful chlorine in my water, which is very rare in New Zealand actually in general. Most water is treated with chlorine, if not limestone.
I would say probably, obviously, having a house over your head. I think for the most part, our school system is pretty well run for the most part.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
It's respectable.
Does our job.
Yeah. I mean,
if it does the job, it does our job.
Yeah.
Well, for us anyway, we're sitting right now on a lake front. It's a bit dark, but it's beautiful, and just really being able to like enjoy the scenery where a lot of places don't have that opportunity.
I think that's a good point. Like, you always hear, we've all heard it, and we always hear it, like, oh, New Zealand, like, it's this mystical place, and these magical landscapes. And I guess primarily living in a city, we don't have
life.
as much as what?
You don't listen to music, you wouldn't get
it.
it.
Oh, okay.
Big city life.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know that song, that famous song. Yeah, I just didn't hear what he said. But I know that song. In the city, you don't see as much of this rural majestical landscape.
country.
Yeah, back country. And yeah, there's a lot of it around, and we're only just on one small plot at the moment. But yeah, when you see it, I guess it does. Yeah, you take a moment and you appreciate it.
What do you guys think about in terms? So privilege can only be given by other people who have privilege. It's, it's how it's like the definition of it is bestowed upon you. What do you guys reckon is our role of the privileged, and probably everyone listening, to share the privilege down and lift up other people who don't have the opportunities? How much do you think that should be our responsibility?
An interesting proposition. I think as an individual, unless you're like ultra successful, which none of us currently are in terms of like finances, like you're a millionaire, billionaire or something, that you can have, like you could give enough money to multiple people, it would change their life. And even then, arguably, I don't know if that is necessary but in our positions as just regular Joes who have enough money to get by, I think I've got enough money to give. If I always give money to a homeless person if they come up to me,
you do.
Yeah. That's doesn't, like, it's not even like I don't question that. Like I'm not even like, oh, like am I gonna miss this $10 or $20, whatever it is that I have sitting in my wallet? It's just like, yeah, of course I'll give it to them.
I feel like in that sense,
that's really
finds
small
a way
gesture
to come back to you.
Yeah, I think so. I believe in that.
Whether that's if you believe in karma or, if you do good things will happen to you. But like giving away food or money to someone, although it's a monetary value that you're giving up, I think there's more benefit to you as a person than it is to the person that you're giving to, because it changes your perspective.
Yeah.
Obviously it's if it's a win-win situation, why not?
Yeah.
It's a form of love, really.
Yeah.
It's a form of like, not, what's the word? Platonic. Maybe that's right. Platonic love, and that's the way to generate love. Is you give love out, you get love back. That's kind of how. That's a simple way of boiling it down to karma or whatever.
I think that's valid. I don't look at it that deeply personally. I just do it because I guess that feels good. It just feels like, the right, I have, as I say, like if I give someone 10, 20, maybe even next time I'll give them 50. I don't think I've done that yet, but I've definitely given a 20 away. Like, I'm not going to remember that from a week from now. Like, that has no bearing on my life, but that probably significantly helped them. I don't expect that the universe is going to return me any favors. It just felt like that was the right thing to do. I don't know why that is. It's not something that I feel like I've been taught or I've tried to go, but it does. But another way would be, and I think perhaps a more potentially more impactful way, and if you took this to real extremes, it'd be quite difficult to do, but plausible, is educating others. So let's say you have this person who is currently like struggling, they don't have a job, or they do but it's not well paying and whatever, and let's say that you do, or you have a way of making money that is plentiful. If you share that knowledge with them, I think, and that's something that I'm just opening my world to doing, is potentially sharing some of the knowledge that I have that could help others make money, if to boil it down to that, but enrich their lives is a better way of putting it, perhaps. I think, and even if it's not a monetary method, if you just have like some really cool knowledge, just sharing it might make someone's day. Like, oh wow, I never knew like that fact or something, like,
Have you guys' opinion or feelings about your own privilege changed over the years? Have you felt have you always felt proud about it, or do you still not now?
No,
or what?
it's not something I ever even considered until this sort of. I feel like this has become a thing.
Yeah, I agree.
In the past 5 years or so. So no, it's not something I ever would have thought of. And I feel like perhaps it's not something that you should feel the need to feel about. Like, as I say, I think a perfect society or a near perfect society is everyone has like a stable household where they're not abused and food is plentiful and things like that. So as I say, I don't feel like you need to. I think you should be grateful, of course. I think that's just good in general. But
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be like, oh, geez, like
Yeah.
walk around on like your tiptoes, being like, oh, I've got this and they don't. Yeah, it's real messy, but
For me, I remember growing up, and there'd be times in my family anyway, where I could see like struggle from my parents in terms of, there'd just be moments like, growing up where they'd be struggling to find money for things, and I don't think it's due to any like lack of hard work, but then there were also times when we have the privilege to be able to like travel as a family. So I think their priorities were just kind of different,
it's
looking at the
murky
bigger
when you
bigger
go
picture.
down those avenues, I think.
But I think with a little bit of time and wisdom, it's a lot easier to, I guess, understand what's actually more important to you. So it's not about the money
I think
aspect of things.
in regards to that, my family probably didn't struggle as much, but they're definitely like, especially like when my parents had 5 kids like under the same roof, that things weren't. I'm the youngest by 10 years, so things have become exponentially more plentiful for me as those children have left the house and my parents have had more disposable income, and that is also twofold because they've climbed the ladder of their careers up until they've retired and things like that. So I was the lucky child in a way, in that I've had the most abundant monetary or material upbringing of my family. But you do look at that, like going back, like all my older siblings and including myself have like travelled to Australia and stuff like that. The standard Kiwi dream, right? You do a trip onto the Gold Coast and that, and it's like, if money isn't that plentiful, should you be doing like that sort of stuff? And like, just speaking personally, like I live a super frugal lifestyle. I don't go away much. Like I don't buy much other than like necessities like food. And probably some of that has actually come from my dad, even though I say that there were these holidays and stuff, but he would tend to be super tight with money personally, and some of that's rubbed off. Yeah, I don't know. Like I think a lot of, not all, of course, but a portion of struggle comes with, like spending money on things that you think you should spend money on. Like, oh, I should send money. Like we should take a family trip to the Gold Coast or something. But you probably shouldn't. You should just do the basics. Yeah, and again, not all of it. Not all. Yeah,
I think every person or family is so different. So, for example, like my wife had memories growing up where their whole family would go away camping, and for me, like right now, this is probably my 3rd time ever camping, and the first 2 times were with her family. So, I might have had some things where I felt privileged to be able to like travel overseas, where I also maybe wish like my family were doing things like going on camping trips together. So it's all about perspective. People just have different priorities, and like it's really what you value. Like now I could probably sit at home with a book or watch a nice movie, not spend any money at all, but still feel privileged that I be able to do
time. Having free time is a massive privilege as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, working at a 9 to 5, like 40-hour work week, as much as people complain about it, it still leaves a lot of free time, like heaps of free time comparatively to other periods of human history. So that is a massive privilege, and I think that's free time as well as meaningless work during your working hours is the biggest struggle to figure out what to do when everything seems like
I think
pointless.
For me, because I went from working part-time like 13 hours a week to a full-time job 40 hours, and so I had a lot of spare time when I was working part-time, but I felt like a lot of that time was just completely wasted in hindsight. Now that you work, well, for me, working 40 hours a week, the spare time you have becomes so like precious to you that you kind of just like you're more cautious about wasting or planning. And I think there's room, for just sitting back and relaxing and having leisurely time, or, like we're doing now, just really not bothering what's going on, just sitting and enjoying ourselves. But, almost too much time can be anti-privilege.
Yeah,
Agreed.
anti-privilege hall.
Speaking of someone who has too much time.
Yeah, it's not.
So what do you do with it?
Yeah, I'm very lucky in that, I work for myself, and what I do is not time intensive. I get rewarded for the value of my decisions rather from the amount of time I put in. And that leaves me with a lot of spare time, which is a wise old, probably from the Bible or something, isn't it? That an idle mind is the devil's workshop. I can relate to that, but that is a privileged position. I 100% appreciate that.
Yeah, and there's that like societal blame where somehow if you have the privilege, you're like not expected to be allowed, or
Yeah,
you're like not supposed to have as much of a
Yeah.
voice as someone who's like struggled or
Yeah.
even still doesn't struggled and doesn't still have the same privileges.
Yeah.
But should it be the other way around? Should you have more of a voice if you're privileged?
Yeah, there's an argument for that. Again, I'm not a huge fan of this word privilege, but
I wanted to say before as well, it seems like I remember when I first started looking into politics, it might have been around 2016 with Trump, and I'd never the first star is out, how beautiful. I'd never
Beautiful.
really truly thought about what colour someone is, black and white, until I think it was around the Trump election when it was just bandied around the news media. And up until then, obviously I'd known I'd know the difference between people's skin colours, but I didn't realise that it seemed almost like it was just the stuff of like silly jokes. It almost seemed silly that it was like on the news talking about, like, I was like, well, people actually care about this. It's not just like a funny joke, which is what it had been, whether that was causing harm or not. Yeah, and so same with privilege. It seems like it's being forced, like from like top down, to be thought about, and kind of help. It makes you self-censor yourself in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So rather than put it in this way that you put it, should privileged people have a louder voice? I would put it, like if you're a well-educated person, or you're a really intelligent person, a knowledgeable person, or whatever, I think you should be embraced, whether that's from a position of privilege or what. If you're just a smart dude or dudette,
Lady.
like, it makes sense that if, I guess this goes on to another somewhat controversial subject, is if you acknowledge that some people are more knowledgeable or intelligent than others, but I think generally it would be accepted that if you're, whether it be nature or just hard, like lots of time, whatever, you're a very knowledgeable person. So if we take someone like, I can't think of a great example off the top of my head of someone like if we go way back, like Ernest Rutherford, that's a great example of a New Zealander, right?
Mm-hmm.
Super smart dude. I think we can all agree on that. I should actually probably know more about him than I do, but I know that he played a big part in the splitting of the atom, which kind of changed the course of history. You kind of want people like that at the forefront of your society, right? And hopefully they can help educate others, right? I think
exactly. He would have had to live a real privileged life to have access at the time, to have access to all that education and to the labs. Yeah.
But I think you should embrace someone like that, and hopefully in return they can share, whether it be through education, like them doing lessons or whatever, or through their products or discoveries, enrich your society. I think that's a good thing, right? You don't want to cut down these people who have great ideas or great minds, because I think then you probably end up somewhere like in the Dark Ages. I think that's kind of what happened in the Dark Ages.
You just tear everything down.
Yeah, like screw these people.
Like the BLM riots, you just ruin your own city. You just self-own.
Yeah, so I think it's a good idea. I think we should for sure embrace knowledgeable, intelligent, smart people, whatever you want to call them. And I think in return, most of them will share that knowledge or share the dividends of that knowledge.
Yeah, they'll feel an urge to want to share that with other people anyway.
I think
That's
most,
one of where you get meaning from is with other humans. So you want to share whatever you've got and your time.
So. In most cases,
other
I think
people.
so.
Yeah.
Maybe not in all, but in most, yeah.
The notion of privilege in the sense that, in the mainstream sense, that we're told about it is almost completely irrelevant to anything. It's like, yeah, you have privilege, and then so what? Like, what do I do with it? Like, that's the whole point. It's like, what do I do with that? That's the point of the podcast.
I think the sorry, just a little bit distracted by that vacuum again.
Camping vacuums
there's
are OP.
been a couple times where well, for me anyway, like I was put in a position talking to someone where I was told, like, no, you shouldn't have an opinion on said matter because you're a white male. And I'm thinking, like, you almost fall into that trap where
You've been told that in real life.
I have been.
Damn, I thought that stuff only happens on the internet.
And that's kind of ridiculous because you're only half white.
Well, yeah, technically I'm a half Kiwi,
you're
half Asian.
Filipino, which is super like.
Yeah. Oh, you might
battler
just need to
culture.
put your mic closer. Yeah.
A super yeah. It's certainly not a privileged culture in general. Philippines, your mum probably had a real struggle.
It was a little bit of like not a kick in the face because for me it's like, well, just dust the sand off your feet and move on. But it was like, who are you to say like I don't have an opinion because of where I was born? Like
I think
it's a bit it's not right.
Like things like that, like because you had this set of circumstances, this skin color or this upbringing, therefore your opinion is invalid. It just doesn't make any logical sense.
We're not allowed opinions on if murder is right or wrong because we weren't raised on dust streets and where murder was happening.
Yeah, I think
that's the logic.
Part of that is accepting perhaps whatever the said discussion is about, that person who had the so-called privileged upbringing therefore may have used their privilege to educate themselves more on the said subject, and therefore their opinion may be more valuable than someone who may have been like closer emotionally or physically
directly experientially.
Yeah, but they didn't understand. As I say, this is all hypothetical, so I can't think of a real world example off the top of my head, but someone could be super knowledgeable on a particular set of circumstances or subject, and I try and refrain from like it's real easy to get into the it feels good to complain about that stuff sometimes. The fact that it's happened to you in real life is surprising to me because it seems like you only hear about other people complaining about it who haven't experienced it directly. It's kind of just seems like it's just an online thing. And again, like you said, water off a duck's back. What do you say? Sand off your feet.
Wipe the sand off your feet.
Off
your sandals.
It doesn't.
Or something.
It doesn't really matter. Again, it's like so. Well, yeah. The fact that it happened to you is wrong. It doesn't make any sense. It's kind of stupid. But
yeah.
Where's David going? He's gonna pee in the river.
Yeah, he's enjoying the scenery. Why not?
He's gonna pee
I was thinking about that before though. Hearing some of the water crash against these rocks here did make me feel the need to urinate. But
should we have it?
No, it's lovely. Well, just enjoying his privilege.
Yeah, he's making the most of it.
I
hope he's appreciating.
I think
his
one thing though, because we came from different high schools, and so it is quite a prevalent thing in Christchurch to talk about like what school you go to. It was always a thing after leaving school when you meet new people. One of the first questions they'd ask you is what school you went to.
It's so worn out.
It's such a dry.
But you can't help
topic.
it sometimes.
But
when the alternative is awkward silence, that's sometimes what you have to reach
like,
for.
Hey, what school did you go to? But should that be something that we take into account as being privileged?
Yeah,
it should be absolutely nothing more than a conversation starter, which is
because we're all kind of the same. It's just
it's so
putting
similar.
a title or a different. You could argue different schools would have different benefits, but like having left school now, like it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter that much, but I think it can have some influence, but again, I think we should all strive. Again, if probably one or two of us will be parents at some point in the next decade. That's a generous timescale, probably. You'll end up wanting to send your children to the best school, right? And that's what I mean. It's a shame if you don't have
homeschool my children.
Open to it.
Nah, just kidding.
Yeah, look, but theoretically, most people want to send. If homeschooling is not an option, most people want to send their children to a good school. So to say it's not a good thing. It's not ideal if you don't have the ability to send your children to a great school or a good school. But the goal is that we should, hopefully in the future, everyone can send their children to a good school, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not like an attainable thing in the next short-term future. But that's what I mean. Rather than
Some
cutting down
casual
people,
shadow boxing going on over there.
rather than cutting down people who currently have the ability to send their children to good schools, we should say we should all strive to have the ability to do that. And I think long term, 50 years, 100 years, something, that should be achievable.
I think superficially you could think of the privilege of having a good education, just full stop, regardless of what high school you went to, just a good education as a privilege. But I think prior to that, the actual privilege in that scenario is the privilege of being instilled in you attitude of learning and loving learning, and that would come from your parents, and again from that 2-parent household, and that's often slept on. I think
huge. I think that's a bigger factor in school is the quality of your parenting, and I think sadly in New Zealand and probably worldwide, that is where most people or most children who end up having the opposite of privileged, what do we call that? Hardship. Disadvantaged. It's coming.
Scum. No, just kidding.
Well, that might be what. Their parents, one or both of them.
Could be in prison.
Could be abusive.
Yeah.
Could be abusive.
My partner was a one-parent household. She turned out great.
It can. It can.
I mean, I know it pretty well. Are you sure?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Of course it can, because probably individually that one parent did a really good job. Probably they had to put in almost double the effort, right?
Yeah.
And so that's awesome. That's a success story, and that should hopefully be an example for those in similar situations. But I think, sadly, and this is incredibly difficult. There is no easy solution to this. Money certainly doesn't work. If money worked, it would have already been solved. But to solve this, portion of the population, that children that grow up in these terrible household, violent, abusive, alcoholics, whatever, a myriad of these factors, and then that is so deeply imprinted in them in their formative years that they repeat the cycle, and that's this poverty, hardship cycle, whatever you want to call it. Money doesn't fix it, because you could give most of these people the money, and most of them would end up broke or
the social welfare programs as we know them have been in place for decades, and so if money was going to fix it, it would have been fixed, and it's almost getting worse.
And that's because I think these people get money and they don't know what to do with it. Oh, I got this bonus, or if it's just a benefit, okay, now I can buy the necessities, which sadly in many cases will include things like drugs or smokes. Not in all cases, again, just in many cases, but they see money and they don't know how to utilize it, they don't know how to save it or whatever, put it to productive means, and as I say, so that requires education, and that's really hard.
And then Nav, you go.
I was just going to say, there can be the opposite side of that, whereas if someone has had almost been born into too much wealth or too much, where you have, there's like no incentive to work hard or to put the work in because everything's handed to you on a silver plate. I mean, some might argue like Hunter Biden, for example, would be an example of that, but it's it's like I think there's a good middle ground to have had some struggles.
Yeah.
And if you can say like, well, I would say probably all of us, are privileged to have come from families with two parents, so standard nuclear family, have siblings.
The way God intended.
Yeah. And
Contentious.
yeah, so it can go both ways.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think obviously you would probably think, I don't have statistics to back this up.
Yeah, you
but
need to look at the data.
Yeah, in all likelihood, more people are born into like...
Tone it down, please. We're trying to record a podcast.
More people who are born into ultra wealth probably end up living successful lives than vice versa, than those who are born into massive poverty that end up becoming successful. Yeah, for sure, there's definitely a percentage of those who are born into ultra wealth that have their own set of struggles, and that's it. I think probably those people don't get much sympathy. Whatever their problems may be, apathy, like what's the point of all this? I've got everything. And
I mean, on a objective scale, that's like the entire middle class now is objectively ultra wealthy if you compare it to any other time.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So that's
somewhat controversial though, because it's so hard because we never lived in tougher times that it's hard to believe, and people always, if you watch the news, you think the world's constantly getting worse. It's really hard to get your head around how,
our parents didn't even have, they had like fish and chips was the only takeaway. They didn't have any ethnic food.
Didn't have internet.
So we could be like, we
Wi-Fi.
want Indian tonight, sweet.
Remember
What will
my,
get delivered to our door?
Didn't have RuneScape.
My dad talking about
Yeah.
how he grew up on, was it meat and 3 veg?
Yeah,
Or
the
something
classic.
like that. Yeah, just the
Irish
standard.
stew.
I wanted to
Potatoes.
say before, don't know if it's a
Potatoes.
tangent, but anyway, this I remember noticing that it seems like when people have massive hardship, online stories and both in real life, I think in real life I've witnessed it, but people have massive traumatic, immense suffering. So like if a parent dies, they lose like a lot, and those seem to be real transformative. And so, I mean, that's, when talking about privilege, that's the opposite of privilege, like getting absolutely pwned by life.
100%.
But there's something that beneficial that comes out of it, and I'm not
Potentially.
jealous. I'm not jealous of it, but in a way,
Yeah.
I want to.
I think. Yeah, sorry to somewhat cut you off.
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean, and I can pull
I
up...
don't wish for it myself,
Yeah,
but
I can pull
I
up,
almost kind of do.
The great whatever quote or cliche from Fight Club, where it's like, our generation, which technically I think we probably would actually, we'd be in that generation of when Fight Club was made. We don't have no Great
don't
War.
talk
We don't have a
about
Great
Fight Club.
Depression. It's like, life is meaningless because that's it. We have all our basic needs fulfilled, and that's it. Look, this is just me personally. There's part of me that would I see myself thriving if there were, whether it be a war or some sort of battle, something a larger cause to
Natural
fight.
disaster.
Yeah, anything, where you could be part of something larger than yourself, and like it's a real clear, like, okay. And so I would say like war is the clearest example of that. Like we have World War II. If we could take ourselves back to World War II, like it's pretty clear. Like you're living in New Zealand, you're fighting with the Allies. Like the meaning of life is pretty clear, right? It's to do everything to win this fucking war.
Yeah, the meaning of life. Yeah,
And-
regardless of whether it's right or wrong, or you want.
It's just super clear.
It would be
like
very clear.
whether you're a soldier, or you're working in a factory, or you're buying the war bonds to raise the money, like it's pretty clear. Like you don't care about the superficial things, whether your food's hot or whatever. It's like, no, I want, I'm doing everything.
Yeah, I know what you
How-
mean.
Yeah.
But and then equally, you don't wish that to happen
No,
again.
no,
but you
that's
just-
right, because
No.
there's all sorts of it's with war.
That's the allure of space, right? Though it's like it could be a uniting thing for the whole planet,
Yeah,
and you can
well,
kind of
that's-
fight
that's
against
the
the
Eddie
nature in that way.
conspiracy theory is that they say that his conspiracy theory is that the elites are trying to. He doesn't believe
Distract
that there
us.
are aliens. He's saying
Oh.
that because he's saying that that's them trying, which seems like a good idea, but he says like, oh, they're trying to tell us that they're aliens because that'd be real clear if there were an alien force, which would be another form of war.
Yeah.
But it would unite the entire, because we'd presumably all band together to fight a foreign.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and he's saying, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, so that's the elites trying to do that to globalize us, whatever. But makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Yeah, I'm down for
humans
that.
are pretty
I'm
good
down
at
to
war.
fight. I'm down
That's
to
pretty much
fight
all we're
some
good at.
Freaking alien species. Yeah, I think that's it. I get it, and atrocities would come with that, right? Because presumably, if we're fighting an alien force, they're way more advanced than us because they've managed to get here with technology that we don't have. But it'd make
I would have thought
the meaning of life pretty clear.
they would have already taken us out by now.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So they're probably not coming anytime soon because they're probably not anywhere near us. They're probably
I
like
remember-
us.
they're probably watching us on a big screen like we watch
Yeah,
people
reality
play
TV.
sport.
But, I think once you get into, and I guess that's another very nuanced topic. Once you get into like atrocities, disasters, there's something very uniting, bonding, meaningful of those, but equally.
Yeah, do you guys
Terrible.
remember when I mentioned my partner asking me if she thinks our cat is happy? And
Yes.
and I'm like, yeah. And so, what if people were like that? And when it comes to war, like with the cat, it can't help but go out and fight another cat, even though it has it's
Yeah,
not going to
yeah.
come inside. Everything's taken care of. It can't help it, and it's kind of like living. It wouldn't say it enjoys it, but it needs
gives
it.
It fulfills like
Yeah,
a
so
meaning,
perhaps
of need. Yeah.
War just ticks so many of those boxes,
I
even though
think-
it's like immense
I think
sadness
it
and
does.
grief for everyone
I
who
think
dies.
it's pretty clear if you look at history. It does.
Yeah, but in a weird way,
Especially for men.
yeah, and especially for men. In a weird
Well,
way, humans might like love it
We do, clearly. It's
In a-
as I say, especially
in every way.
male.
'Cause, yeah,
Well,
and
isn't
both
it
all the
pretty clear?
positives and all the negatives.
Common for like underage people, borderlining, to fake their age to sign up to go to war. And I don't know if that's just because they weren't, I guess, clued up as to how it actually is.
Yeah, they would have seen like
But yeah,
purely the
purely
propaganda.
propaganda.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm gonna be
But,
this hero.
But yeah, it's almost like we need to have some struggle to like
yes.
get us through. And as Joe Rogan mentioned this in one of his podcasts, like people who live in places where it just gets very cold and just Greenland, or even like
but they all
Boston,
killed themselves.
like in the winter, like having to actually go outside and shovel your pathway, or you can't go anywhere. It's like it's a shit time, but you kind of need those sort of things. And I can kind of liken it to like a frosty day, getting up.
Windscreen.
Your windscreen is frozen, and it's like, for me, it'd be like 5:30 in the morning, and you're just like, oh man, I just want to get in the car, warm it up, and it's, having to like, you need that those struggles and those daily battles in your life.
Yeah. Meaning you can generate your own meaning.
Yes.
It comes with responsibility, and so war is a kind of responsibility. You have an immense responsibility if you're a young man to go fight, and that gives you meaning. And then so like you have a responsibility to get to work, say on a frosty morning. So your meaning is to get your car running so you can move it.
Yeah.
Well, or to like
So
feed your
responsibilities.
kids. You need
I
to
think
earn a living.
It's a lot harder. When it's you're like, and having a child would probably make it.
Yeah,
a
it's
lot
the ultimate.
easier.
It's the ultimate responsibility.
Speaking as
It's
like
the ultimate meaning.
a single male, like I would not find meaning in getting up and defrosting.
Maybe you just
so
live too much of a
I do,
privileged life.
100% happy
Yeah.
to admit that.
That's fair.
that.
But that's a very
Um,
superficial. But like,
But equally, I do see if there were some grand purpose war, something where and as I say, maybe if I had a child, that would become much clearer. I'd just have to get up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. if I were working a regular job or something to do this. You have to change the nappies, which is nasty.
you,
But
you just think whatever things
purpose.
are immense responsibilities. Pets, owning a house, a child is usually considered the ultimate,
yes,
biggest responsibilities, and so
Yeah.
they confer the biggest meaning as well.
and
So you can game it, so you
Yeah.
can actively choose more responsibility for
And
yourself.
I think
Has to be
an
worth it.
interesting take on that topic is I think some people struggle once that once that child has become an adult,
Well, once the responsibility's done,
then they lose that, and they're like, "What the fuck do I do now?"
for sure.
Yeah, and even that happens on a smaller scale. I think for a mother in the early when the baby is super reliant on them, and then once that phase is over, I think it's. To be fair, I'm not an expert on the subject, so perhaps it's not exactly related to this, but postnatal depression is a big thing. So I don't know if that's
well, my wife works with postnatal depression.
So I don't know if that's super tied into if that's just purely after giving birth, or if that comes at somewhat of a later stage.
The responsibility is that's
like
not
once
quite a nice fit, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think from what I've heard, some of it is just like losing the feeling that your baby's not attaching to you.
Oh, okay. So it could be a myriad of factors. Or another factor I guess is also I was thinking is like
a spiritual.
The pregnancy process itself is is a massive process in terms of like the responsibility of keeping yourself not smoking or drinking or doing any not eating even like I remember it was a big thing. One of my sisters was super paranoid. Like I just specifically remember this for some reason. Like sushi, you can't eat sushi when you're pregnant because something in sushi or whatever bacteria could potentially like make your baby sick. So pregnancy in itself, that 9 months or so on average, itself is like it's a form of a battle. It's a battle, or it's whatever you want to. There's probably a better word for it, but it's a phase that requires immense responsibility, and so once that is over, it's like, oh shit, now what? So I think there's something deeply human about needing these goals, purposes. That I struggle with this all the time myself. Because life it's too easy. It's too easy. It's too easy. Give me.
What an ungrateful thing to say.
Yeah, well, what do you want thrown at you?
A war.
I'm
down for war, man.
I'm ready. Some sort of life-changing, threatening disease. Maybe not.
My preference would be, I think, an alien invasion would be dope. I'd be really down for a battle against the foreign
front lines.
I'll be on the front lines for sure. To unite the entire populace, and then when we destroy
you
those
be the face of propaganda for the war. The war against the aliens.
Hell yeah! When we destroy those pathetic beings, then we'll create a better world. We'll be all united.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, man.
We're probably like the 50-minute mark.
That's good. Yeah. I've got all the privilege off my questions off my chest. I think privilege. Stupid word.
Yeah,
let's never say it again.
I guess to throw in a little bone at the end, go way back to the start, I think Manuka honey was briefly mentioned. Now that's something super unique to New Zealand. Technically, I think perhaps there's possibly some coastal areas in Australia that can now brand themselves as Manuka honey, but barring that, only New Zealand Manuka honey is Manuka honey. You can't get Manuka honey. And we're the OGs of Manuka honey, so and it's tastes amazing and supposedly has health benefits. It's expensive, but if you got the money, embrace that shit. I just had four jars of it arrive today, and man,
can't wait.
We'll come round to yours for honey on toast.
I'm happy to shout at the boys because I'm a big believer in the product, so I'm happy to spread the word. It's the next. Well, it's already a big thing, but I'm happy to
liquid gold, baby.
Liquid gold, literally liquid gold.
No, right. I think that's a good point. I think I'd take away is if you can find yourself people who, we all specialize in different things.
Trading, sports betting.
Depends what it is, but it's good to have share your you could argue privilege or your skills with other
knowledge
people and gain from them, because that also saves you time in the long run.
I think my spin on that would be sharing knowledge.
Knowledge.
Yeah, don't sell courses. Just share it for free, and in return, if you share it, oh damn! I just mouthed getting burnt alive in there. Share your knowledge, and I feel like in in return, that's one of those things you'll probably be rewarded if you're good enough and persist at it. Without I mean, there's nothing wrong with selling courses, but I think there's better ways of maybe affiliate sales or just people tipping you or whatever it is, ads, monetizing a community. It's something I feel like I've got some knowledge that I can share with the world. There's someone who has immense self-doubt. That's something I've put off for a long time, but I'm feeling confident at the moment to share some of my knowledge with the world. I've already shared it with the two boys here, and just doing that really lit a fire in me. I think just sharing like that's something that feels good.
Any last closing words from you, Daniel?
Yeah. What David's saying. Go for gold. I heard last week that someone say they think one of the causes at least, or if not the cause for Alzheimer's, was living a life not expressing your full truth, the full truth. So a pathetic example would be a waiter asking you if your food's okay and it's not okay, and you say, yeah, it's fine. So all those little tiny little lies you say kind of cause this stress on your brain and cause Alzheimer's. So don't get Alzheimer's in that way. Live fully your truth.
You're not offending anyone.
Yeah, 99% of people, or 90% to be safe.
Can't hear what you're saying, sorry.
90%, if not 95, 99% of people will appreciate if someone's cooked something that sucks or whatever, the product sucks. If you just say, I'm sorry, but like it sucks, they'll actually appreciate it.
But there are nice ways to do it.
Yeah. Don't be like, oh, you suck. Like this sucks. Be like, I appreciate your effort, but
this fell short this time.
I don't think I've never eaten out that it sucks that bad.
I haven't
at all, really.
I have. I've returned coffee. And that's a huge thing for me. It's like, man, I wouldn't normally do this, but this was actually
I should have
pretty
done
bad.
that coffee at LAX. It's the worst coffee of my life. But
2 years later, still living it down.
All right. 3.
We should probably wrap it up there.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Peace.
This podcast was unofficially brought to you by the Department of Conservation here at Lake Pearson. Join us next time for another episode of the Friday Council. Peace.
Later, guys. Take care.